We don't normally sit here eating mince pies, by the way, but this is Christmas. Item 1, apologies please.
Apologies received from Elizabeth Johnson, Harris, Andy Watson.
Anybody else? Okay. Interest. Disclosable interest. Oh yes. Before we get to disclosable interest, we better ask you, is it your wish I sign the minutes as a correct record, the previous ones? Agreed?
Yes.
Thank you. And now members' interest. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Taylor, ex-work colleague of mine from when I worked at Ford Motor Company a few years back.
Okay. That's in which application?
I would assume it's new, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not my application, I'm just reading something out for someone else.
Right, okay, but
You know
I know
one of the
Mr.
speakers
Taylor.
anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, at the time you can. Nobody's registered to speak to you.
No, they assured me it had been
It hasn't. We've only got one speaker and it's not for the Newnham one, I'm afraid, so.
What if we found out to be different afterwards?
Well, it isn't, because the person, there are two people responsible and they work next to each other in the same office, and this lady is one of them. And I was with the other one up until a little while ago, and they assured me there's only one speaker. Who requested the speaking?
Well, as friends of ours asked us to read out the statement on their behalf, and they've...
Well, can I suggest the only thing you may do, and I didn't see you doing it while I go through the agenda, is give your information to the person that just declared an interest who knows you, and he might pick up some points, but I'm afraid you won't be able to speak, so.
Just for you, Chairman, to clarify, anybody wishing to speak has to register to do so through that office, so...
which I was told was clearly done, so
No, it hasn't been.
I'll be very surprised if that's a fact.
Chair, can we vote to allow them to speak?
I'm afraid you shouldn't do, no.
Shouldn't
Because many people have claimed, you see, this person isn't the person that has said that he claimed that he asked to speak. It's somebody else on his that he's speaking on whose behalf they asked to speak. So no, we shouldn't do it. So if you want to pass the papers to him, sir.
Yes, or could I call the people in if they can send an email to prove it?
Through you, Chairman, what happens is when an application is to be presented to us planning committee, every person who has written in will receive a notification letter to advise them of the date and the time of the planning committee, and also the procedure if they wish to speak, with the details of the committee clerks, including their phone numbers, and the deadline for that as well to register. In this particular case, it's unclear to me whether or not your friends have actually...
They got the letter and explained that they've done it in time, yeah?
My understanding through the committee clerks that those arrangements have not been made.
So, while you go on with your other things, shall I phone them and see if they've got an email they can send
Or name
to
the
prove
person.
it?
I'm afraid, sir, we've got no evidence of them ringing, even if you phone them.
If they were to send an email in of the proof where they emailed it, or...
No, you can't email, you have to phone up. You have to phone up and register with a telephone, not an email. Right. You don't email, you phone up.
Right.
I'm awfully sorry, I'm not trying to be awkward, but...
No, but they just assured us that they had registered, so...
Well, they certainly haven't, most definitely. You can do what I suggested you do, and that's it. You can pass that. We normally don't like pages to be passed across the country. As you help yourself, you can give that to that particular councillor. Yes, sir.
Chair, it would make a nonsense of our proceedings if people could just come along and make an argument that they had, that they had a right to present a document or speak when the officers had no prior knowledge. You probably quite rightly said that we should know, but you haven't actually announced that we must know. And while it would be announced in most circumstances, because we could be at meetings all night if anybody could get off the street to make a presentation. We have not. We don't have a great list of speakers tonight. And the overriding concern should be that we make our decision on an application with as full knowledge as is possible.
Okay.
And I just feel that in the circumstances, there's a danger that we can perhaps tolerate a change to procedure on an evening like this, which is a relatively small meeting with a small number of speakers. But there's a danger that we put the requirements of procedure before the requirement to have a decision that is going to be based on all the facts in which we can accomplish. So I just wonder whether, while I totally recognise the undesirability of this happening on this particular occasion, I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm going to cut you short there. In 30 years I've been here, it's never been allowed. I've certainly never allowed it, and I don't intend to this time. But I'll go over to our solicitor for her view.
No, I'm very sorry. The council, the officer here does not have any understanding that there was a speaker registered to speak on that application, and my strong advice to this committee is it's not allowed.
What happens if subsequently it's proven that it was done?
Well, then there will be a complaint against this council. I'm confident that there is no... I have spoken personally, this is one of the girls. The other girl I was speaking to a little while ago, and I am totally assured there is no other person registered to speak. They've been doing it for how many years? 20 years, 2 years. And so it hasn't been done. Anyway, we're going to continue the meeting now. No more.
I wish to raise a point of order on a completely different matter, Chair.
Yes.
I think I don't expect that the officers would wish to or be in a position to react. But nowadays, to refer to professional women as girls is completely unacceptable. And I ask you to apologise.
I apologise to you, but I have always referred to my client next to me as a girl. She accepts it.
No offence taken, Chair.
If she needs an apology, she can most certainly have one. But we've known each other for, well, I don't know whether I interviewed her when she first came to the council, but a lot of years ago. So, no more points of order. Right, we've got to party whipping arrangements.
None.
Right, members of the public, we don't get together to decide on your planning applications beforehand in groups. Okay? Applications withdrawn or delegated. The very first application on your agenda tonight in West Hatton has been deferred at the applicant's request. So we go straight on to, well, we don't, but we'll tell you a few bits of housekeeping first. If the fire alarm bell rings, please go out the main doors that you came in and go outside as soon as possible. Please switch your mobile devices to silent. The proceedings are being recorded, so if you want a copy of the recording and the decision we made, you can ask for it. Speakers will have 3 minutes, and after that you'll be asked to wind up. There's only one speaker. This is the only opportunity for you to speak, so please don't interrupt, which I'm sure you won't. And you're not going to clap or boo or cheer, I'm sure you're not. And if you see officers talking during the course of the meeting while you're speaking, it's so we're trying to get a quicker answer at the end of your speech. Okay, we go to the first application, which is 0570 in Brixworth.
Thank you, Chairman. The site, as you can see by the site location plan, is located on the edge of the village of Brixworth and is adjacent to the Harbour Road or the bypass. The site formed part of the landscaping buffer for the housing estate which has been built many years ago to help reduce the impact, the visual impact of the development when it first commenced. Over the years, the highway verge landscaping for the bypass has also become established. This is a retrospective application for the change of use of the buffer strip to garden and the construction of 2 outbuildings. The application has been amended to reduce the red line so it does not abut the footpath. The photos show the site as well screened from public vantage points and will not have a detrimental impact to the locality. It is noted the parish council have objected due to the impact on their locality, but as you can see by the photos, it is very well screened. They have also raised ecology concerns. We have consulted our local ecologist at the Wildlife Trust, and they do not object to the proposal, and a condition is recommended for by ecology enhancements. Overall, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Local member, Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Although they refer to the buffer strip, in actual fact there's 2 buffer strips, as that photograph might have shown. There's one actually that's in the ownership of NCC, which is the verge to the footpath. That still remains. So, as you can see there, you can't see it properly, there's a footpath there, but up to the footpath is NCC, so that buffer zone still remains there. There is no breach of screening along the bypass because of that. The buffer strip, as the officer states, is within also the village confines, so there's no conflict with policies as was suggested. Regarding noise and air quality, DDC Environmental have stated the amount of vegetation removal will not give rise to any significance in noise or other pollutants for nearby residents. I don't know if you noticed, but the houses go off at an angle anyway. The offer has put forward 2 conditions. One, a scheme for biodiversity, which is condition 3, and also committed development rights removed, which is condition 4. I therefore propose we accept officer's advice with the conditions attached.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Owen-Swift.
Can I, before I could second, can I have clarification?
Well, I need to see if we've got a seconder first. Councillor Cribbin, do you wish to say something at the moment?
No, I don't at the moment, thank you, sir.
Okay. Councillor Owen-Swift.
Yes, it's a very odd application. We don't often have application like that. Where I am not at all comfortable is that the garden, when they did that, they doubled the size of the garden. And a lawn is a lawn. So can we put as, because we say that we need biodiversity and so on, but what we saw is a lawn with some trees that is not biodiversity as far as I'm concerned. And basically they double the size of their garden in one stoop. So if everybody else does that all along, you double, and I know we should not speak about the future, but it's not that if there was that, when the development was built, and that was one of the conditions, I think we should not be so quick as dismiss that condition of having 2 buffer zones. So if we can make sure that it's not alone with nice little trees that are very suburban, but something that is biodiversity, I am not opposed to that. But as it is now, I cannot see as biodiversity.
Do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the application for the original housing estate was back in 92, 93, so you'd have expected them probably to be built by 95 at the time. So in a sense, it's had a long time to sort of establish itself. In the sense that particular area has also got additional landscaping through the bypass. In a sense, that has it outlived its requirements of that condition for that buffer strip, because there's the additional buffer strip with the bypass. And regarding ecology, the condition it sets out a time frame for that biodiversity enhancements to be carried out in accordance. So they must submit within 6 months from the date of commission, and then implemented during the first planting season. So it's likely to be trees and vegetation planted along there. Just because it's a retrospective doesn't mean that we can't think about the ecology enhancements, hence why that condition is imposed to there is a net gain. And our ecologist is happy with that. I am satisfied that by moving that area of buffer hasn't impacted what its original requirements were for, such as the landscaping, such as noise. And as been pointed out, our environmental health has no objections to the proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
I've got no objections to the application. I've just got a question which is for my own interest as much as anything. If someone is going to extend the length of their garden by taking over land, isn't there a case for us selling that land to that person rather than...
We don't.
We don't own the site.
Yeah,
So
that's the matter between the landowners, civil matter between the landowner.
We're not the landowners, I understand that.
Councillor Ritchie.
Yeah, a few things I'm concerned about here. Am I right in thinking that to create that bit of lawn, that the applicant has removed trees that were planted with a purpose? And if so, who did the trees belong to? What was there a legal right that the person had to remove these trees other than a planning law?
I'm afraid, Councillor Ritchie, that's not a planning issue. In the sense that's more of a civil issue regarding land ownership.
Okay, but just to be clear, trees were removed.
Yes.
Trees were removed to create what we see very clearly is a lawn with a couple of sheds in it. There is our condition that is in front of us that the garden should provide for biodiversity. From the photograph that we've seen, it appears to me that that wasn't the intention of the applicant in creating simply a well-mown lawn with nothing but grass around about it. If we were to agree this, how often would we be able to, would DDC or DDC's successor organisation, following reorganisation, actually be around to actually check that this bit of land was not simply a grass lawn? Am I right in saying it would never happen?
Through you, Chair. No, in a sense, there are lots of planning conditions which we put on all sort of various types of applications. Now, there is a concern that there's a potential issue of ecology. Now, we can enforce against conditions with a breach of condition notice if we feel it's expedient to do so. It's something which we do monitor on a number of applications. So it's not just that we don't consider that this is something that will just go, we just put the condition on and they won't do it in the future. It's something which will...
Well, I understand. Well, in that case, if this is allowed to happen, I see no reason why all the other people living along the road back onto this buffer zone are not going to do something similar to extend their gardens. And this is happening at a time that the government's Committee on Climate Change is recommending an absolutely huge increase in tree planting. And we would be giving a green light to people removing trees. I just feel that this would be extremely foolish, and I would be totally opposed to it.
Thank you. Councillor Frost.
Anthony Ridgey's actually solved my question there. Mine was going to be similar to that, or is similar to that, in that if I live next door, assuming this is passed, tomorrow morning I'm quite sure that I would make an application for the same, because who would want a bigger garden? And unless you can say otherwise, it's true, isn't it, that this would quite clearly set a precedent, and it would be quite hard for the council. Sorry, let me phrase it more of a question. Would it be hard for the council to turn down applications for neighbours? I mean, connected with that question, if the answer is that it's fine, then I guess I'd just like some confirmation that whoever and whenever put that buffer in, they basically got it wrong, and they put too big and too wide a buffer. So can we say with hindsight, therefore, assuming this, in light of the recommendation to approve, that they planted sort of too many trees and that there was too big a buffer?
Councillor?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the land is owned by the original developer, so they would have to agree to sell the land onto sort of the applicants or the owners of the site or of the house. To deal with that. It is clear from the photos that potentially it hasn't been managed in a long while in any case. But again, it comes back to the same story. Planning does not override any legal restrictions over civil ownership, and also the issue of just because it's happened doesn't mean it sets a precedent. Each case is taken on its own merits. Sometimes, yeah, one or two may be acceptable, but the third could push it into having more of a detrimental impact. So it's all about each application as it is. Again, we haven't got a board where we can see the future. We can only go on with what's presented before us. And in this particular case, the owner is willing to sell the land onto the applicant.
Thank you. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. So this is sort of partly being said, I think, really, but we're in a very odd situation here, because I imagine that if the owner of the land actually wanted to take the trees down, we'd have very little power to stop them doing that. Having said that, these people have just gone and taken trees down without permission. This is retrospective, isn't it? And as far as sort of wrecking the biodiversity, yes, they have done that. Now, to ask them to say that there's lost biodiversity and they must put everything back, that's pretty much putting it back how it was, isn't it? That's never ever going to happen. I mean, it's almost a nonsense proposal to ask them to, because otherwise, what's the point of doing it? I don't understand why we're even asking them to do it. We either accept it or we don't. You can't recreate biodiversity on a lawn when you've already ripped it out. Otherwise, it's going to go back to being a buffer, and that's not what they want to do. So we're talking a little bit of nonsense here. I do have concerns that I'm not sure whether we can have a cumulative detrimental impact either. If 3 people have done it, then we say, well, actually, no, cumulatively, that's the fourth person can't. Is that where we start? I mean, I think we're onto a sticky wicket. Having said that, I just wanted to make those points, but overall, I think there's not a lot to say.
Okay, thank you. There is a point that we're looking at a change of use. We're not looking at a retrospective planning application. Councillor Dabbs next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just think about what's the future going to be here. You know, we've got a little bit of grass, a little bit of garden, a few buildings. There'll be a planning application coming in for a dirty red extension on the site, which we heard earlier is within the village confines. Would that be allowable? Would there be a presumption towards development there?
Catherine? Would there be a presumption towards development now they've got a bigger site if they wanted to extend the house?
No, because each case is taken on its own merits. PD rights have been removed, and because it's a side wall on the house facing a highway, planning permission would be required for an extension. So we would have control over the impact on the locality. Again, we don't know what may happen in the future. Yes, I know it's indicated in the report that something could come forward, but again, it's something which we would have control over. And coming back through some points about they knocking down some trees and we want them to replant those trees, it's not the case. It's biodiversity enhancements. They can be from a range of a number of things, not just by putting trees back. It could be sort of through wildflower meadow, that sort of thing, just by different type of planting which can bring in different types of biodiversity rather than what was brought in by the applicant. And also cutting down trees, they're not protected, so anybody or the owner could come along and just take those trees down.
Thank you. Councillor Evans-Swift.
Yes, going back to Councillor Daft, relevant planning history, in last year, DA 2019-0216, they have withdrawn their planning application, but out of curiosity, I went and had a look of what they wanted to build. And what they wanted to build, without that bit of garden, they could not have built. So, because that means they will not have enough garden to build what they wanted to build. So I think we have to be careful, and I am not completely opposed but I find it, the history of the site, to have this planning application that was withdrawn. My only concern if they go back with another planning application that is even slightly smaller. It was a huge extension on the property, and I think it would be unwise if we allow that. Could we say that the permit development will be withdrawn and no extension of the site they proposed could be made, because that is what they proposed in the first place, and it was really huge.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As far as change of use is concerned, I can't see any problem with that at all, because at the end of the day, beyond the buffer zone is of course the bypass, and if that isn't a development of some magnitude, then what isn't? So I don't have a problem with the change of use of that to garden. It's very straightforward, that is. What I do have a problem is completely turning our back on this issue of, is there a civil matter here? And I want to make absolutely sure that we've got a clean tail. In other words, that the applicant has served the relevant notice.
Yeah.
So he's acknowledged that someone else does in fact own that land, even though he has fulfilled the major condition of his claims by fencing it and saying, that's mine. So I want to be absolutely clear that if anybody comes back to the council, we can say, oh no, we did this, we did that, it's no problem.
The correct notices.
That's all I need to know, thank you. Otherwise, I'm quite happy with this one.
Thank you. Well, I think we've had enough debate. We have a proposal of the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Those against?
3.
The application is approved. Next application is 0709 in Newham.
Thank you, Chairman. The property forms a traditional two-storey dwelling within the Newham Conservation Area. You see from the drawings that the property itself front onto Manor Lane are an attractive property. It's made of primarily stone. The application for members tonight proposes the construction of a two-storey side extension which would be set in and set down in height from the main dwelling. The application itself has been subject to a number of amendments following comments from the Conservation Officer, and you'll see from the report that there are a number of concerns still raised by the Parish Council and the neighbours relating to impact on the conservation area, the loss of privacy to neighbouring properties, and also the impact on the highway. The development itself would not project any further south of the existing dwelling. Equally, the windows on the rear elevation would not serve any habitable rooms, but would serve a landing and allow light to a stairwell. You'll see from the report that there are extensive comments from the Conservation Officer who confirmed that following the amendments, there will be acceptable impact on the conservation area, as she considers the application is now acceptable in terms of its impact on the conservation area and also on the listed buildings. You'll see from the representation that there is an objection from the Highway Authority. This relates to the impact of one additional vehicle actually parked on the highway. I do put to members' attention to the NPPF, which advises that development should only be prevented or refused if the impacts on the road network are severe. In this particular occasion, officers do not feel that the parking of one vehicle on Mallow Lane would be severe. However, in regard to these considerations, officers consider the application would be acceptable and are recommending the application be approved, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Local member?
Yep.
It is you. Is it Councillor Sir?
It is, yes.
Would you like to read the statement?
And I would like to read the statement.
From Mr Taylor gave to me, or not? I'm happy to read it out.
I'd rather speak from
Okay.
my perspective and understanding of the site. I know Manor Lane. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge parking, there's no question. I think that's fair to say in most of our villages. One additional car, yeah, it could cause an issue, but equally so you could have it as I have concerns with respect to the overlooking, and I don't think we've got any pictures so we can actually get a better understanding. It's difficult to tell from roadside, that's for sure. Okay.
Okay.
Do we have any others?
We're just looking at this.
Okay.
You might going to go with that.
This one shows it here.
Okay, that's fair enough, yeah. It's a tricky one, yeah. What is acceptable overlooking? Any overlooking for some people would be too much. So I'm not sure on this one. I'd like to sort of reserve the right to speak again once we've had some debates on this, please.
Okay. Councillor Irving Swift, then Councillor Debs.
Two things. First, about the design, I think having worked with the officer, the design will blend with the street view. We know that unfortunately one car will be less able to park. Now, I have two questions about the overlook of the other property. Could we put it such a way that the glass let the wind, the lighting, but you cannot see through? Because that could be a possibility. So we have obstructed glasses there. And secondly, you say that because of it will be very difficult to maintain the wall between the next property and the property, they will propose a sort of capping over the wall. How is it going to be managed? Because it seems quite... Yes, they say that the capping on the side, on the boundary wall, because it's just 20 centimeters, it would be very difficult to... So I don't understand how the wall of the other property, to whom it belongs, if it belongs to those people, And how can we condition the capping of that wall for not creating further problem later? Otherwise, besides that, I have no objection.
John?
Just want to come back and obviously a couple of points. With regards to the additional window, the additional window said it is only to serve a stairwell, so there is no overlooking, and it doesn't project any further south from the existing property. So that element of overlooking is already there from the existing windows. And given that it's a stairwell, the majority of people would not stand there for many minutes on end looking out of that window. But I think we're quite happy, officers are quite happy to accept a condition if they feel that's the best way forward to explore that window. Regards to the capping itself, because it's on the neighbour's wall, it doesn't form part of this application. We can't insist they do the capping. The capping would only be with the agreement of that neighbour, because that wall forms the property of that neighbour. Hence why there isn't a condition on there, because it would be unreasonable for us to impose a condition related to someone else's property.
Sorry, could I come? So if the wall has a problem, it would be a civil matter?
It would be a civil matter, yes.
So let's hope that they speak with their neighbour and find agreement.
Okay, let's speak with Councillor Dabbs.
Thank you. I'll just read out the statement that Mr Taylor passed to me earlier. As it says here, it's a statement on behalf of the McCarthys who live next door to the property. I think since I'm reading this out, I will actually abstain from the vote on this. I don't want any accusation of bias, but I think in fairness, let's see if we can hear what people have got to say. So it says, we are unable to be here tonight for personal reasons, but ask our representative to present our key objections to the application. Should committee members wish, they would be very welcome to visit the site to see the issues firsthand. Number one, loss of privacy. Pictures 1 and 2, which I assume is pictures 1, 2 and 3 there, show the gap in which the extension will be erected. It will directly overlook our entire rear garden, including our main immediate area and block light to the patio area adjacent to the party wall. Number 2, the party wall. The extension will be built up to the stone boundary wall, which is possibly over 250 years old. This means we'll be unable to fulfil the maintenance charges placed on us by our land registry deeds. Initial professional advice indicates that the proposed solution to overcoming the maintenance issues is unworkable and likely to lead to the eventual loss of the wall. The design also proposes cutting away a length of the wall at the front. We're concerned that this, combined with excavations for the extension foundations, will render the remainder of the wall unstable. Number 3, parking. The Grove currently has 2 bedrooms, but has had up to 5 vehicles belonging to the owners and their lodgers fully occupying the limited parking available on the narrow lane. At time, access to our house has been very difficult due to the number of cars parked outside, and the doubling of the number of bedrooms is only likely to increase the problem. Manor Lane also has the passage of heavy agricultural and water treatment vehicles which struggle to pass the parked cars, see picture 3, and has resulted in the loss of 1 metre of our verge in recent years. Both of these concerns are confirmed in the Highway Authority's objection to the application. Finally, number 4, conservation area. The Council's supplementary planning document on designing house extensions states that an extension should protect the character of the house and the area in which you live. This extension would do neither. It will replace a stone gable wall and integral hayloft door dating from 1764 or earlier with a solid brick wall. The guidance also states that windows and construction materials should be of the same as those of the original main building. The extension comprises brick walls with painted timber windows, whereas the existing windows are stone mullion and the gable wall is stone. Further, the terracing effect that will be created by building the extension right up to the boundary wall will undermine the distinctive character of the housing in Manor Lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments about not voting on it. That's very, very fair. Right, Councillor Liberty is next.
Thank you. I find one of the interesting things about this application is that it lets us see the back of some of these buildings. I mean, I know Manor Lane from the outside, not from the rear side. And although, I mean, from memory, I don't think that every house in Manor Lane is either historic or beautiful. There are many that are. And I'm rather surprised at the advice that has come from the, our conservation officer. It strikes me that, looking at the pictures of this house, it's something that you feel would merit listing. I don't worry a great deal about traffic problems in Manor Lane. It is a cul-de-sac, is it? That seems to suggest it actually leads somewhere. But for most purposes, it's not as if you're living on a road at which traffic is passing your door. But it just strikes me that putting in, adding to this house in that way, it just seems out of keeping with a lane in which many of the houses are already close together. And I'm swayed by the parish council's objection in terms of it being out of character for the rest of the lane, somehow that it detracts from the lane. Privacy, light and noise and so on. There are not issues that worry me that much because, people are living close together or, it's not going to make a huge increase in terms of the number of people or the number of vehicles that are actually using the lane. But it just strikes me that in this particular area, if somebody needs a bigger house, they should go and find where they can buy a bigger house, rather than doing something which I think would detract from the rather historic features. I'm not a conservationist, but it strikes me that there's something rather special about that lane with the mix of houses in it. And I just feel that this is not an area where we should likely be giving a green light to people building yet more of these houses.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. For this particular application, it seems to me to be a lot more straightforward than is to be the case. The planning officer has specifically said that the proposal would not result in unacceptable overlooking or overshadowing. It's confirmed that parking provision would not be affected. More importantly, the conservation officer has said, with revised details, I think that the design is now acceptable. So we've got the two professionals who have given this the green light. And I think it's very difficult for us to oppose this in any way. And I'd be quite happy to put forward that we go with officers' advice in this particular application.
Thank you. You have a second though? Councillor, would you like to speak now?
No, Chairman, I have nothing to add.
Okay. The next speaker on the list then is Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Chair. It's a difficult one when we've got officers saying that this is A-OK to do this. I am also really surprised that they've got the A-OK to do this. When you look at the end of that house, that gable with that loft door, it's sort of intrinsic to the whole building. Now, I understand that there's been a lot of work done on this in consultation, and I don't think it's by no means the worst, most horrible thing being put on the side of this. And sometimes some of my arguments is in 100 years we'll be trying to preserve that. But for me, there is a certain amount of infill in there as well, which does impinge on the light and the next person's house. And I understand that officers say that that's acceptable. Well, okay, it probably is in the terms of this country and where we live and a small island and packing things in. But the fact remains is that extension isn't there at the moment and it does impinge. I fully agree about the glass as well. If this does go ahead, then that glass should be should be blocking glass, because it's easy for a planning officer to say that no one's going to stand on the landing for 2 or 3 minutes. We don't know that, do we? I mean, maybe we've got a person that likes standing on the landing for 2 or 3 minutes, and they will do that every day, all the time, or just have a particular interest in looking out on somebody's garden. And I think we have to be really, really careful with that, because it is all too easy just to gloss over these things going forward. And I think we should have a mind to actually do something about that if this is granted. But personally, I'm a little bit disappointed that this has been given the go-ahead. And I'm really not sure about it. I don't think we've heard all of the words yet, but I'm still on the fence on this one.
Thank you. Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see how to a planning officer that this would be acceptable, because you take the points of the PDF things literally and the angles and things in keeping, then I suppose you can put forward that argument. But we used to live 2 doors down from that, and I can say with absolute honesty and sincerity that on this one the parish council are definitely right, and that this application it is out of character for the rest of the lane. It's just like they say, and these are the guys that Newham's are just a lovely village, and that lane is one of the loveliest parts of the village, and these guys know what they're talking about. They live and breathe it, and you're just spoiling something that's really, really nice, but a very small benefit. You're not going to be able to house more families if you're in desperate need of accommodation. You're just spoiling something that's really nice for no benefit other than to give somebody a little bit more space than they do currently have. As Councillor Ritchie said, if somebody wants a bigger house, we should encourage them to buy one. In a nutshell, the parish council are right on this, and I think the planning department are wrong.
Thank you. I think I must defend our conservation officer. We have a conservation officer where most of the members believe that she's over-enthusiastic, that she's the wrong way. In other words, if anything was slightly out, she would recommend a refusal, much to the annoyance of most members in this room. But there again, she's there to please members. She's there to keep the historic buildings of this district alive for the future. And defending her, she has made no objections to this, none at all. So there you have a very strict conservation officer. So all I say to you is, I hear some of your comments, but if you are going down the route of refusal, you make sure you've got a reason that you can defend on appeal. Right, next person to speak is Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I'm just surprised from the conservation officer's perspective, but I don't know what he is today. It's a shame it's not listed because we wouldn't be here. And I can understand somebody wants to, obviously you need a bigger house, etc., but this does almost terrace that particular spot. And I'm struggling. I mean, from the perspective of the people there, of course you can understand, but 9 Manor Lane, as Councillor Frost has said, to me it does have a huge visual impact, essentially filling in that gap. I'm struggling, so if it does get approval, we certainly need to have obscure glass on that first floor landing, that's for sure, so we can have that as a condition. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Minister?
Yes, to help us, because if it would have been listed, we could have been assured that even in that condition will not have been allowed, because it would be a pastiche of added up, so that will not be very conform of the spirit of adding on a little building. But just the planning, the conservation officers say that they have worked to reduce the extension. So can we know exactly how much smaller on the ridge the extension is? Because I think that will help us to limit how much at the back, because it's not a flush.
Yeah,
And also,
I understand your question. The officers are busily looking at that sort of information.
and that will, I
At
think
this
that
very
will,
moment.
yes, that will
Be.
help us to understand and see if that mitigates enough.
Please work hard. Correct.
Just for clarification, the actual property itself, in terms of the height, the ridge height, has been dropped. So it's been dropped down and set further in to make it quite distinct that this is an extension rather than a passage of what's actually there. Equally, the proposed materials are to be used, it's actually brick. I know there's been some concerns raised about that, but fundamentally the purpose of that, again, is to make that quite distinct. And also to use the brick compared to stone is to ensure that the subserviency of that extension is clear.
Okay.
So in one way, I think it would be better in that case if it's not listed, if it's in stone. That is me, because the next house is in stone, this one is in stone, so why to add a brick in the middle? I am best placed if it's not listed.
Well, again, conservation officer must be happy
Yeah.
with
If you could just refer to this photograph, obviously you can see the gable end, the neighbouring property is brick.
Yeah.
If you look up the road as well, there are many other examples of brick within the vicinity as well.
Councillor Ritchie, a quick one, is it?
Just a quick one. I mean, I'm hoping very much that the conditions that are proposed will be quite irrelevant, because I wouldn't want to see this going ahead. But just in case the committee decides otherwise, the conservation officer, the bullet point right at the bottom of page 29 suggests withdrawing permitted development rights, protecting the current appearance. That doesn't appear in the conditions that are listed at the moment. Is that something that should be there? I assume that the third bullet point is in a sense covered by condition 3, but it would be good if that could be confirmed.
Can you confirm that, officers?
In terms of condition 3, what's that? Proposes it only allows the development to be carried out in accordance with the details which are submitted to probably to the conservation officer of honesty regarding all the materials. So the materials are controlled through condition 3. I'm not wholly convinced that the removal of PUD rights would be necessary, because any additional windows on that gable end would require consent in the planning commission in itself. So sometimes for them it would require planning permission in itself. There's no reason to remove DD rights.
Okay.
Chair, can I just check something on that? Sorry, Chair, I think Councillor Ritchie's right on that, isn't it? I mean, if somebody does do something different on this and then comes back to us and says, it comes back as a retrospective or something, and then I say, well, we've given them the planning permission and we've already accepted that they can do it. I mean, really, the building materials should be in there, shouldn't they?
It's usually done this way. That's the normal way of doing it, Councillor Wesley.
So we can be assured then that no one's going to come.
You can be assured that it'll be done correctly, as the committee wants it. Right, I think we've had enough discussion on the application. Now, we've got a proposal that the application be approved, which has been seconded. That is subject to the window being what's the word? Restricted. Obscure glazed. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right. I shall vote for the approval of it. Okay. Right, the application is approved, subject to the window being obscure glazed. The next application is in Hill. And to remind you that the only reason that this is on the agenda is because the land is ours, that we are selling subject to a planning permission, this particular planning permission. So that's the only reason it's on the agenda. Okay?
I've got that clarified, Chairman. It's a long-term lease.
Yeah. Long-term lease, not selling. I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chairman. As been mentioned, the site is located within Daventry in Hill Ward. It is sited within the industrial area of South March. The site is allocated within the emerging plan for industrial development. The planning history also demonstrates the principle of development has been accepted on site. The applicants have been in dialogue to overcome concerns regarding the footpath link through the site, which is part of the requirement of the policy with the Crime Prevention Design Advisor. Members will note from late reps that the provision of a public right-of-way through the site would cause a danger or a crime issue. Therefore, even though it's noted in the emerging plan as part of the policy, given the concerns of crime and disorder, in this particular case it's considered that it's necessary to actually remove that element from the proposal. So we have received amended plans to demonstrate that there's no right-of-way, public right-of-way within the site to cause that. Members will also note by the late representations the highways following the receipt of the amended plans no objection to the proposal. It is considered that the proposal is acceptable. It is noted that there will be some cut and fill to reduce the overall impact because it's actually on that hump. But given it's closely related to existing industrial development and with the existing boundary treatment and any proposed boundary and vegetation, which is recommended as a condition, it will not have an adverse impact on character or appearance of the locality. Again, environmental health do not have an objection to the proposal pending suitable conditions are imposed, which have been. Ecology also considers the application is fine, again, provided suitable conditions are imposed. Overall, the application is recommended for approval as set out in the report and also late representations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. We have one speaker, Mr. Cole, who's the agent.
Actually, I'm the developer. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, to you and the members of the committee for the opportunity to say a few words about our proposal for the site. I'm Stephen Cole, as the Chair has identified. I'm the Director of Claymore Phoenix North, which is the applicant company. As a company, we're delighted to bring the application before the committee as it represents a combination of almost 2 years of very hard work among a number of parties, including the local authority, who we've liaised very closely with SEMLA also, and of course our own team of advisors and consultants. The NOL, as you all know, is a very challenging project. The topography of the site has previously defeated attempts to bring the site into economic development, despite the fact that it's previously been consented. But with the backing of the council and the award of a significant grant from the local growth fund, we have been able to create a viable scheme. That is the scheme before you tonight. Our proposal is to bring forward the development of flexible business units totaling in excess of 55,000 square feet and a home for jobs expected in the order of around 150. Since the financial crisis, there's been obviously a boom in large-scale warehouse developments driven by online retailing, and millions of square feet have been developed up and down the country, including this M1 sector in these Midlands. The mid-range and smaller units have not come forward in the same numbers, and Daventry, along with many other similar towns, see very little development of this kind in the same period. We're confident, therefore, that there's a pent-up demand for these units, and the single park will meet that demand. There's growing companies here in Daventry, and also those seeking representation in the town. The committee are reminded to grant consent this evening. Our programme is to be on site with earthworks early part of the new year to commence the main works in the first quarter of next year, and for projected completion towards the end of next year or the early part of 2021. We very much look forward to doing this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry I referred to you as agent. Owner. Right, local member, Councillor Matt.
I'm very pleased to see this piece of land being used for this purpose, to bring employment to the area, and I propose that we approve the application.
Right, do you have a seconder? I'll take you, Mr. Councillor Frost. Do you wish to speak?
No.
Right, the next person is Councillor Wesley, then Councillor Irving Swift. Ben?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I've got no objection to it. I would have proposed it or seconded it. I am a little bit disappointed that the crime prevention has stepped in again and removed the path. I think it's a shame. I think it's overkill. I think we need to bring a little bit of common sense to the utility of these sort of places. I think it's crazy, but I've got no objection to in fact I welcome it.
Thank you. Councillor Irving Swift?
Yes, but a few things of little detail, if you would indulge me. One, number 10, the obligation for the cycleway and footpath. So that will be delivered because it will be, sometime when you put aside of that complexity and so on, and when you come at the end, there might not be enough money and so on, so I would like...
It's been withdrawn.
Shall be provided.
Great, Chairman, just to help clarify,
Sorry, I haven't had read
the report was written when there's still discussion with the crime prevention design advisor. It was thought that potentially the footpath could actually be brought in, but following discussions, it's actually there won't be a footpath. So I think as in the late reps, condition 10 is recommended to be removed.
Well, I'm sorry, I think that is another side that I don't like, because we encourage people to use this to cycle. And I think you will, if that will come back, I will be very happy on maybe another time. Also, on 18, that is my bugbear. When you put a plan and some tree die and so on, they say that you will replace it with the original size of the tree, and if a tree die after 5 years, nobody ever knows that gardening is my passion. So after 5 years, a tree should have at least grown of that. So if you put a little whip, you should have something a bit more substantial. So could we have the tree to be, when they die, if they die, hopefully they don't, but some do, that they could be replaced of the tree to match the next door tree, if that is possible.
I'm sure you'll get an answer on that. Catherine?
Thank you, Chairman. In regards to sort of the actual footpath thing, as you can see by the site location plan, so I'll just answer this. There's actually quite a lot of footpaths which actually address the site. Yes, it may be that people might travel 5 to 10 metres more by foot or bike than potentially than footpath, creating a new footpath, but it's not. It's still it's a sustainable location. In regards to the trees, sometimes it's difficult to actually replace larger trees because they may not survive by replacing similar sized trees.
They do.
But depending, it depends on the overall size when they grow up. So at least there is some planting going to be put back in place.
Thank you, Catherine. You are talking to a lady that knows the trees.
No, sorry.
Okay, now you can't come back. I'm just saying to say how good you are on them anyway. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you. I'm so not clear what the situation is going to be on a footpath and a cycleway. I think that these days it's hugely important that, that we have adequate cycleways for the people who are going to be working in these units, people who are going to be working nearby. And I think that when we're developing a new site, it gives an opportunity to actually upgrade the cycleways round about. We have got to be thinking about bikes and walking for the future. And I think that therefore has got to be central to any plans that come forward for a site like this. Of course, I'm delighted that there's the prospect of something happening on that site. It has been there waiting for somebody to come along and say that they can build industrial units on it. And from that point of view, yeah, we should be pleased. However, I have two questions. The first is, has there been any estimate made of how many kilograms of carbon dioxide this is going to add to Daventry's greenhouse gas emissions? This will be a building that is owned but least stamped by Daventry. These are things that are directly in the control of Daventry Council, and I just feel that we've reached the stage where we cannot simply pass planning permission without considering sustainability in a long-term environmental sense by looking at these things. And my second question is related. How many solar panels will be put on these nice flat roofs, and what plans are there for having heat pumps so that they're not reliant on fossil fuels? Because unless we start insisting on these sorts of technologies at this stage, it's going to be hugely difficult to actually make improvements in buildings that exist. But when these buildings are only being planned now, it is surely incumbent upon us to insist that these are built to the highest of standards.
Thank you. Can we insist?
The over answer, I'm afraid, is a no.
Sorry, no to what?
To one, don't know about the CO2, and also solar panels. It's not being proposed at this stage. In regards to wanting that, unfortunately, we haven't got a development plan which can make people.
National planning framework? Sustainability?
There's lots of different ways of sustainability, but this case is taken on and what's before you, and I would not like to refuse an application based on sort of lack of solar panels or not. And in addition, with the overall sustainability of the buildings themselves, how efficient they are, that's more of a building regulations issue rather than a planning issue. I note your concerns about footpath and cycleways and trying to promote more people to cycle. As people may be aware, I'm a keen cyclist, so I'm very keen to promote cycling, but at the same time it's got to be safe to do so. And to be honest, if our crime prevention design advisor is saying, by the way, what they would also have to do by really segregating the site would actually not be a visually attractive place in any case, and would I like to go along there? Probably not. So I can understand the crime prevention design advisor in this particular case.
Thank you. Right, we've had enough councillors. We've got a proposal, the application be approved. It's been seconded. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Those against? 10-1. The application is approved. Thank you. The next application is, would you believe it, Brixworth again, which is 0889.
Thank you, Chairman. The property is detached dwelling within Brixworth. The surrounding area consists of detached dwellings, whether it's two-storey or bungalows. These properties are not on the same building line. They are either set forward or set back, giving the variations in street scene. So it would appear as you're walking along the street as the roof heights are very different heights. The proposal is for the raising of the roof by 1.5 and the insertion of a dormer window to the rear and roof lights to the front. The proposal will not result in a detrimental impact to the communities of the adjoining neighbours. The concern which has been raised regarding the impact of the proposed development is the impact on the street scene. So that's the main concerns raised by the parish council. Members will note from the photographs the properties again appear to be on different heights, quite clear, given their different building line. It's considered that the increase in height will not have a detrimental impact on the street scene and will be in keeping with its immediate setting. Therefore, the proposal is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Local member, will it be the Vice Chairman again?
Thank you, Chair. This application rests on the development basically not in keeping with the street scene, but the officers pointed out the houses, as you can see there, they're stepped in a way and set backwards and forwards. The height of the roof will increase. I've got 1.4 metres, but I'm not going to argue about 0.1. In the village, other properties have had their roofs increased by a similar amount, which has not affected the street scene. You could actually argue it brings variety to houses by not everything being the same. Also, there's been no comments received from neighbours, which I think is important. So, taking the above into account, I recommend that we accept officers' advice for approval.
Thank you. Your seconder? Councillor Smith, are you seconding?
Yeah, please.
You wish to speak?
No.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? No. We have a proposal the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour? 11-0. Well done. The application is approved. Just for change.
We're going back to Brixton.
We're going back to Brixton again.
And very similar to the one which members just considered. Again, this is a detached dwelling in a primary area of detached dwellings, but in this particular case, the house types are very different to each other, as you will see by the photograph. The proposal is again for raising the roof by 1.4, but it also includes the insertion of three dormer windows to the rear, and it also includes a two-storey front extension. It's considered that the proposal will not result in a detrimental impact, again, on the residential amenity. Again, the main concern is the impact on the street scene. The neighbouring properties have different house types, and the alterations are considered sympathetic with the application site's property and the character and appearance of the localities. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval. Members' attention is drawn to late representations, but these concerns are all civil matters and not planning issues. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Local member, Councillor Parker again.
Thank you, Chair. The parish council objects basically to the street scene, but again, as the officers pointed out, there's actually three houses there, and they are of different heights, and they are backwards and forwards from that particular house, as photographs you've seen. The front elevation is in proportion, and also it's partly obscured by the front garage, in actual fact. The roof is stated will go up by 1.4 metres. There's been also, again, no objections from the neighbours to this. So therefore, again, I would propose we accept officers' advice.
Thank you. As the hand went up straight next to you, I'm sure you're seconded. Is that correct? Right. Any? No? Okay. We have a proposal and seconded. The application be approved. Again, would you vote, please? All those in favour? Yeah. Again, 11. Well, Brixton is doing well tonight. That's it. That concludes the meeting.